Okay, Seplat Energy, they just reported their half-year 2026 results. So if you look at the headlines, you see that revenue grew by 30% to a tune of 1.82 billion US dollar, which roughly, if you nairalize it, you'll be getting 2.8 trillion. So, and we nairalize some, so you see naira and dollar along the way because of their primary report was in naira, in dollars. So we just nairalize some for context because, but it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything. Then income, net income also grew to these two and stuff like that. So if it's your first time of watching our analysis, know that your analysis on Edge is broken into four: the headlines, then if you come here, you see what's happened, what we found out, the evidence, and then what to watch forward. So that is how we break down our X analysis. Then for the analysis you need, we have four books we look at. First of all, the current price chart, what the market is saying, the balance sheet, the income statements, which we have, our analysts have stripped out and work out on the firm, not just using the raw one. You need to strip it out. Then the balance sheet and then the cash flow. So let's start. So that is why also, like we normally say, always follow us on X, @double_invest. Why? Because this analysis come out on time in X. Like today is 9th already, but this has been out since the 6th of August. So sure we get it in real time. Then when the team makes out time, we now make the video to upload. So give us a follow on X. So let's get to it. So the first thing on the radar is the price chart. So this is what the price chart looks like currently. The price has, you see where it started off sub 1,000. Now currently price is at the top 11,369. So in terms of naira value, this is the most expensive stock, not from valuation, but just for naira price. So that is so it is the most expensive stock. But sometimes the naira price doesn't make the difference. What sometimes matters, what the price will be like, is what we call outstanding shares. If you have lesser units, so the few available ones will be priced. So it doesn't make it expensive, it doesn't make it cheap, but in naira terms, it is the most expensive stock, followed by Airtel Africa. Yeah. So let's go to the next book. So this is the balance sheet, the income statement. So of course you can see the revenue. So you can see the revenue growing by this. You see the gross margin. So margins are looking up. Then the middle line to operating profit also looking up. Then we just remember we talk about this tax. You need to talk about so you understand what is going. Then the bottom line is looking up. All the margins are flashing up. Pretty impressive. We are getting somewhere. Then for the balance sheet, look at the balance sheet. You see that the assets dropped. So assets dropped by -5%. Then equity also dropped. Then the current ratio, which shows how liquid the firm is to cover its short-term obligation, dropped a little bit, but still very much okay. And other margins are looking up, even though tiny, though return on equity, return on assets improved slightly. Yeah, not even slightly, improved marginally. So then let's look at the free cash flow before we now give you facts behind the figure. So for the free cash flow, you can see that the free cash flow improved from 605.2 billion naira, because you are nairalized, but you can always dollarize it, to a tune of 723.75 billion naira. So what's are the files behind this figure? So number one, we have increase in free cash flow. So there was an increase in free cash flow there. The price, so macro price is the dominant driver of the revenue you are seeing. So this revenue growth you are seeing is as a result of price. So because of why the petrol price, crude oil, moved if you throw out this due to what is happening in the Middle East, so crude oil increased price. So they, in their book, they booked a price of 94.13 cents, just roughly $94 per barrel, as against what it was before, 72. So that's a cap. Is what led to the increase. So it's what led to the increase, which is close to almost 30%. So from the oil arm of their business. So that's why you're seeing revenue plus 30% to that tree, talking of the oil arm. Then the operation is of course genuine, but that crude oil price is the dominant thing there. So if it unwinds, it's important to look at it. Then operation is actually genuine, but it was offset by two things. There are two things. They had a disruption. The Yoho platform outrage. So this oil and gas, these are the terminology. So one of their platform, they had some outrage, number one. Then the Focado's pipeline that we are using there was also an outrage. That one is not their own, it's a third party pipeline. So for close to 38 days, there was outrage in the pipeline. So this is the two kind of disruption they had. Then the tax we told you to watch about, if you compare them with other, there's what you call PPT tax, that's the petroleum tax, petroleum profit tax. So there was slight adjustment if they evaluate your asset. We still write about it, so you can go and read. So they adjusted it, so their tax percent, because in oil and gas, their tax sometimes people call it puniti. It sits within the handle of 60 to 80%. So the likes of ARA, they paid over 80 something percent. So, but due to the adjustment of the assets that Seplat has, their tax dropped from previous 85% to 60% rate due to their assets was revalued and stuffs like that. We don't want to bore you with that. Then in terms of segment, their oil segments, which made bulk of the revenue, grew by over 638%. Then their gas segment grew over 313%. So in naira, in dollar terms and naira terms, you see whooping trillions of naira. Then, of course, they continue to hedge, of course, because of oil volatility. So they hedge, and also they sold off one of there was a divestment. They call that sector the long, which is Seplat long, that's linking the NFPCL joint venture they had. They sold 10% stake there to free up that money. Then the insurance also, they have some insurance upgrade from the actuate that happened with their own Yoko platform. And finally, there is a new board appointment. Of course, the Health Energy build a stake in Seplat, and Elumelu emerged into the Tony of the UBA. Tony UBA Elumelu, so he emerged into the appointment. Of course, he's becoming the chairman of the destiny. So that is what happened with Seplat. So going forward, the crude oil price played a significant role. One. Number two, the revaluation of their tax also played a significant role. So you can go and read further other things. You can see everything in this video. So they enjoy from that what you call the PIA, which is Tax Industrial Act, kind of reshaped what they are supposed to pay on their PPT. So there is it about Seplat. See you on the next one.